the world paints U.S. versus China in the AI space. I had a conversation with Eric Schmidt about this, where the concern in my mind, and I think in Eric's as well, I'm curious for yourself, is not U.S. versus China. It's U.S. and China versus the rogue actor, the individual out there who's using, digital superintelligence to code up the next virus or code up the next hack, whatever the case might
Sure.
be. How do you think about that here?
I would probably take a bit of a counter position. I mean, look, I'm very worried about rogue actors because rogue actors don't necessarily act as rational actors. Nation states typically exist on a rational basis.
Yes.
And you could take kind of an extremist theocracy like Iran, and you could argue, well, they're not acting rationally. But those are few and far between. In general, nation states follow game theory. They act in their rational self-interest.
They don't want to destroy themselves in the process of destroying you.
Whereas when you bring that down to the level of an individual or a small group, you can have people who believe they win by losing. They could think that them dying is the victory. They could believe that bringing out an apocalypse is their destiny.
Mhm.
And so I'm terrified of, for example, tailored bioweapons built by rogue groups. The idea, though, that it's the U.S. and China versus these rogue groups, I'm not so sure. I think that China on its own poses its own unique type of threat.
Of course.
It doesn't terrify me as much.
Yeah.
China is not going to purposely build a tailored bioweapon that wipes out all the Jews, for example.
Mhm.
I don't worry about China trying to do that. But at the same time, I mean, China's made real material threats and said they are going to reunify with Taiwan by force if necessary within this generation.
I watched your most excellent TED talk in the wargaming, and it's chilling.
Yep.
To see how that plays out.
One, it's not just Taiwan. China has been China. I mean, in living memory, China tried to invade Vietnam. A lot of people who want to pretend, they want to whitewash China largely because they're often working with China. So they have to carry water for them. They say, well, Taiwan is a special case. There's this long history. I say, okay, well, what about when in living memory they invaded Vietnam? What about the fact that they are currently occupying huge swaths of territory in the Philippines? What about where they're illegally building artificial islands in the sovereign territory of other nations? What about the fact that you now have Xi going to conferences and saying that they think Okinawa, Japan is actually a territorial vassal holding of China? He's pretended to have this awakening. He says, well, the Okinawan people used to be a tributary state to China. They gave us tribute and we failed them by failing to protect them from being taken over by the Japanese imperialists. He's laying the groundwork for
revisionist theory.
Well, yeah, he's laying revisionist history because he knows he can't motivate a bunch of young Chinese guys to go and take over a territory they have nothing to do with and absolutely no way of convincing anyone that is theirs. He has to tell them a story where this is actually part of the great Chinese empire. And so that is actually where I think China is their own unique threat. They are willing to reinvent history with their own population, much like how Russia has with Ukraine, to justify death and violence at mass scale. I think they want to take elements of Japan. They want to take elements of the Philippines. They want Korea. They want Vietnam. And certainly they want Taiwan. Imagine what a world looks like where China achieves even half of that.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, a rogue actor is not going to do that. That's what makes it such a unique threat.
Yeah.
A rogue actor might
like you said,
make a virus, but they're not going to take over a democratic nation and seize control of the semiconductor supply.
Having said all that, what you said about being rational actors and being able to take actions politically and militarily to prevent that from occurring gives you a game plan.
100%.
But the question I have, is our Anduril systems in the idea that Lattice is giving us a omniscient level of knowledge, to prevent rogue actors, it is, I think, going to be critical to have enough data of what's out there and being able to track it.
I think that
do you imagine that as part of your future?
I think it's a part. Honestly, I'd probably have to give more credit to companies like Palantir. I think they're building more of these not quite at the tactical edge, real time tools that allow you to find these bad actors. They've been involved in apprehending and killing a lot of really dangerous
Yeah.
people, terror cells, multi-time violent criminals. I think Palantir and companies like them are actually probably doing that. Like if I had to split it, I'd say a company like Anduril is much more relevant to a more traditional hard power deterrence theory that stops a rational actor like
Yeah.
China, less so a rogue nation state group.